Hey yo, and we back with another Chad Daybell Trial, okay? And today on the stand, you're gonna have Lori Vallow. Her nephew is going to speak out on the trial about JJ's. He had to identify JJ's body. So let's take in from here.
Where were you? My parents' house.
This is her nephew.
Do you recall who? Do you remember? I don't. I just remember somebody from, I think, Rexburg calling just to let me know that they had found what they were pretty sure was the kids. Well, once you got that information,
Chad,
what did you do? The next day was my wedding, so I was getting remarried. So I got married, and shortly after that, I just felt like I needed to go up to Rexburg. I don't know what for. I just felt like I should, so I drove up there. When you were in Idaho, did law enforcement ask you to do anything as it related to JJ or Tylee? Yes, they asked me to identify JJ. Okay. And do you recall where you were when that happened? Where I was when I identified JJ? Yes. Okay. It was, I think, outside of Pocatello at an FBI location. And do you recall the date? June 11th or June 12th. How did they have you identify him? They showed me some pictures of him deceased. They asked me if that was JJ. And I said, yeah.
Jay must have been a fun little boy.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time. All right.
Why she
Cross-examination.
do that to those kids? And Chad just sitting up there, ain't no remorse. Y'all, this is Chad, attorney, about to dog him out right quick.
Need a moment? No, I'm okay. We can go.
You mentioned you had contact with Charles Vallow and Lori Vallow quite frequently. Is that right?
Yes.
What was the frequency with which you had contact with Charles Vallow from when you first met him to the time of his death?
It varied by the years. Sometimes when he lived close to me, I'd see him often. I could see him every week and sometimes. And then there was other times where, he traveled for work, so I might not see him for a couple months. And they also lived further away, so sometimes I wouldn't see him as often.
They were nomadic. They never owned a house. They would just constantly rent. That's what I recall. I think you testified to that. Is that right?
I wouldn't use the word nomadic, but they definitely moved more often than I did.
Okay. And approximately the date you first met Lori Vallow?
It would have been in 2008. I was driving with my then fiance at the time from Texas to Utah, and we went through Phoenix, and I met the Cox family at that time.
Okay. And would you agree with me that Lori Vallow and Alex Cox had a very, very close relationship?
It was on again, off again. There was times where it was very close, and there was times when they wouldn't see each other very often, but
Well,
they knew each other very
well,
well.
are you aware that it seemed that every time Lori moved, Alex would follow her and move to where she would move to?
Not always. Yes, sometimes that did happen, but other times no.
And more often than not, though.
It depended. There were times where Alex lived with in Arizona with us, and Lori left to Hawaii for a few years. But then there was other times I agree with you where
Right.
they all moved from Texas to Arizona together and things like that.
And on the subject of Hawaii, during the time that Lori left JJ with Charles for that 2 month period, and I believe that was January and February of 19. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, it might have gone into March a little bit too, but yeah, that time frame sounds right.
And during that time, are you aware that she was residing and staying in Hawaii?
I don't know where she lived at that time. I didn't have any contact with her.
Okay. And at the time you were married to her niece, so you guys didn't discuss Lori's whereabouts as being in Hawaii for 2.5 months.
Well, my wife said she didn't know where she was.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that was true. I just know that's what she said.
Okay. Now, would you agree with me that Tylee and JJ had a very, very close relationship?
Yeah, I mean, they were brother and sister, so I would say they were close.
Well, more than that, isn't it true that for all practical purposes, Tylee was really like the second mother to JJ and caring for JJ?
It depended. I mean, she was a teenager, so there was definitely times where that wasn't the case. But there was also times where she was a nurturer.
She the
for
oldest
JJ.
sister.
I mean, she loved him, but she was, like I said, she's a teenager, so hey, with Mary, responsibility for sure.
But did you observe JJ looking at that in maybe a different perspective? That he relied on Tylee for a lot of things and things that maybe Lori wasn't providing for him?
Objection calls for speculation. Overruled.
Did you observe anything to that effect?
And JJ was special needs, so I don't know that I could have identified that JJ could have.
Think
I mean,
like
JJ
that.
needed every adult or anyone who was there to help him. That's what he needed. And I definitely remember during that time when Charles had him, he missed his mom a lot. Charles brought it up in those same emails a lot, and it broke your heart.
And after Lori got back from Hawaii in March, early March, there was an attempt at reconciliation.
Yeah, they did try.
And at that point, did Charles confide in you that he actually was convinced by Lori to make Lori the beneficiary of his life insurance policy again?
Charles didn't talk to me about his life insurance policy. Charles did not talk to me about his life insurance policy.
So he never discussed with you finances or anything like that?
We talked about financial stuff, but he never talked to me about his life insurance policy.
Okay. So you're not aware that the life insurance policy was placed in Lori Vallow's name during this reconciliation period then, correct?
I would have no ability to testify to that.
Okay.
Mm.
You brought up the subject of Melanie Gibb. And my recollection of your testimony is that you found it unusual that Melanie Gibb was there for Christmas of 2018.
Yes.
And I can't recall if you had said that they seemed to have a close bond at that point. How would you characterize their bond at that point?
Who's they?
Melanie Gibb and Lori Vallow.
Okay. Yeah, it seemed like they definitely had a closer bond.
And are you aware of when Melanie Gibb and Lori first met?
I can't testify to when they met.
Did your wife participate in these gatherings in August, September, and October with Melanie Gibb and Lori?
I believe so.
Yeah. And these gatherings in August, September, and October of 2018 were what you described as these fireside chats?
And I think they went past October. I think they were in November as well, in December.
But they started in the mid to early summer of that year. Is that right?
I can't say when Melanie's very first one was.
And were you aware that Melanie Gibb was the organizer and planner of all of these events?
I can't testify who planned them.
It wasn't your wife who was planning them.
It was Chad.
So it would have been without my knowledge.
Okay. And you found it unusual that Melanie was there at your Christmas holiday for what would be deemed a family holiday. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you happen to recall seeing a gentleman by the name of David Warwick at Christmas that year as well with Melanie?
No.
Okay.
Mm.
Now, you touched on a little bit about the temple, and I don't want to cover this too much, but in terms of the temple, what I don't understand is when someone goes to the temple in your faith, they do that as part of the marriage process in the beginning, right? To sort of the bond. It's a bonding, or you bond with each other, or I'm grasping for the word seal. You're sealing. Is that the word?
There's a few things that you can do at the temple. You can go and do something called baptisms for the dead, where you can.
Well, I want to talk about. We'll get there in a minute.
Okay.
And I don't know that we need to spend a lot of time on that, but I'm as part of the marriage process, you seal with each other as part of the marriage process when a couple first gets married, right?
Yeah, we have something where you can be sealed to your spouse for a time and all eternity, is what we call it.
Okay. And regardless of what happens, you're sealed, even if it means divorce or otherwise, right?
No, not quite. But
Okay.
I mean, we make promises to God,
Okay.
and with those covenants, if you keep those, we believe He gave authority to the person who seals you to be able to stay married even after you die.
Right.
But obviously, with any covenant, if you don't keep your promises to God, then you can break that, and it's no longer sealed.
Right. And that's something that's important in the LDS faith, is to keep your covenant to God, right?
I would hope for most people, if they believe in God and they make a promise with Him, that they would want to keep it.
So and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but
You
the
said
sealing
that.
is also a process in which you and I'm trying to be careful about the way I phrase this, so correct me if I'm wrong. You stand in for somebody else who has passed away or is no longer alive, and you baptize them as a proxy for them. Is that kind of what goes on there?
Sealing or baptizing? Because you said baptize.
Well, sealing. There's a sealing process about being a proxy for someone who's passed on, right?
Yeah. So if I can be sealed to my wife here living, and that's something that I want to do, then I have that option. And for those who passed on, we practice in proxy is what we call it, but we practice the process of doing that for them so that it could be done here on earth, so that if it's something that they wanted, they could have that option in heaven.
So when they pass on, you're helping them move on to heaven. Is that really what that's all about?
The process would be up to them to choose, right? But yes, we're going through the process here in behalf of them.
Well, you mentioned the baptism then, and that's what I'm a little confused about. So you baptize people who have passed on as well.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to beyond the scope of direct.
Overruled. So, Mr. Pryor, there needs to be some relevance as well, so that's
Okay.
narrow.
Anything else looking into the shooting that took place?
Yes.
What did you do?
After you go through something like that, it was pretty traumatic. It took me a little bit to realize that that a resolution wasn't just going to come really quick. Like the police weren't just going to arrest someone, a day or two later, and and then it would all be resolved. So I started trying to figure out things I could do to help assist law enforcement into finding who shot at me. That included hiring a private investigator, going back through any information I had, like old emails, the ones that Charles had sent me.
Okay, so let's talk about that. You said Charles had sent you some emails. When had Charles sent you emails?
He sent me emails. So when he and Lori were going through the divorce, he was sending out emails to the family with things he was concerned about, because he was very concerned about her mental health, and with things that pertain to this belief set that she was building.
Okay.
Y'all, this is day 9 of the trial. Okay. I don't really know who we have up here today. I think this is the prophecy. I'm not sure. Let's. How's everybody doing today? Shout out to all them real deals. Gotta give it to y'all.
Why don't you wait, and then we'll bring the jurors in. I think they're close.
Make sure you join. Please appreciate if y'all join the channel for $2.99 a month. Okay? I appreciate that, y'all. That'll help with the donation in the super chat, okay? And if you want to donate to the channel with any kind of contribution, you can donate to the super chat. I appreciate you. Okay? The guy on my right have his hand on his elbow. It's Daybell. Chad Daybell. My right. He's the one on trial, and that's his attorney in the suit coat jacket.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bale. Please be seated, everyone. Good morning, everyone. We're back on the record this morning on case CR 22-21-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. The prosecution's here present, the defendant, as well as defense attorney, Mr. Pryor. Court notes the jurors are all returned and accounted for and properly seated. I've also received and reviewed the jury affirmation signed by each of the 18 jurors, so thank you again for continuing to follow the court's admonishment on your affirmation each day. When we concluded yesterday, the witness, Mr. Warwick, was under cross-examination, which will be continuing this morning. So, Mr. Pryor, if you're ready to proceed with continued cross, you can do that. As you make your way over to the podium, and you can do that now, Mr. Pryor, I'll just note to the witness, Mr. Warwick, you are still under oath for your questions. And I just want to confirm, did you review any of the trial testimony since you left the stand yesterday? Okay, you did not.